Alrighty, greetings and salutations, everyone. My name is Andrew Kirchhoff, and welcome to our Thursday night live stream for Week 17 of the 2024 fantasy football season. First and foremost, for those of you who haven't been here for the last couple days, happy holidays, Merry Christmas. Hope you guys had a great last couple days. Obviously, the football that has taken place over the course of Wednesday and Thursday of this week has been horrid. You know, we would have thought a couple weeks ago the Rams versus the San Francisco 49ers would have been the worst Thursday game of the season. This one tops it, 6-3. No touchdowns again in Week 17. I mean, if yesterday's Houston Texans performance wasn't brutal enough, this one just takes the cake. I mean, absolutely horrid. But hey, we got to move on. What has happened has happened. We can't, hang our hats on the idea that, this is going to happen on a consistent basis. But at least we know, Thursday Night Football is pretty much cursed at this point. As we progress, we're going to try to get ourselves in the best position to succeed for the remainder of this week, as we are also trying to capture a 2024 fantasy football championship. So I'll go ahead and continue to answer questions over the course of today's live stream. But man, these last couple days, the Steelers offense, the Houston Texans offense, and then both of these offenses completely fried. There's just nothing left within them. So we'll continue to do our best. Let's hope that the remaining games of this week on Saturday and Sunday will have a little bit more upside implicated within them. But either way, if you guys have any questions, make sure you include your scoring format, half PPR, full PPR, or standard. The more context you provide, the easier it'll be for me to answer the question. And we'll go ahead and we'll be in right away, shall we? All right, let's see what we have in the live chat. All right, let's see here. Let me scroll down. Okay, we have a lot of stuff in here. Here we go. Billy Mack in the chat says flex Hall, Ford, or Hubbard in a half PPR. As of right now, I'd go with Chuba Hubbard of those available. Anonymous says that game was ... I know a lot of people are going to complain about it, and it is what it is. We can't do anything about it. Look, these are the things that are completely out of our, control. The weather wasn't even that bad. Like, it was said to be a heavy rain game at times. Yes, through that game there was a lot of rain, but ultimately, more often than not, it wasn't raining, and still we could not complete consistent passes down the field. Pretty ridiculous, in my opinion, to say the very least, especially considering, again, the Seahawks are a significantly better team than the Bears, but they definitely didn't play to that tonight. James Cook or Ladd McConkey in a full PPR. As of right now, I'd probably lean in the direction of going with James Cook there. Julian says, hey, two different leagues both of them in full PPR. Pick 3, Garrett Wilson, Drake London, Laporta, Vidal. I'm not really interested in playing Vidal or suggesting Vidal until we get confirmation as to the status of J.K. Dobbins. So earlier today, we had two pieces of information that were released. First and foremost, Gus Edwards, he's out for this week. Additionally, CeeDee Lamb, the thumbnail of today's live stream, which, I wasn't privy to prior to recording today's video. After I recorded it, I'm like, oh, well, all right, he's out for the season. I still have to post the video. I'm not going back to re-record this thing. So at the end of it, yeah. So CeeDee Lamb and Gus Edwards out for this week. As if it wasn't already difficult enough to find a starting roster that's consistent, we have ourselves the injury struggle that we continue with. So if we're going to be in a situation which Dobbins plays, if Dobbins is active, he's going to be in a top 15 to 16 capacity running back. I would assume no limitations, and Vidal would not be really a viable option unless, of course, Dobbins is inactive. In that case, I don't mind playing Vidal out of the available options you have there with London and most likely Laporta. But that's how it currently stands. I think the chances are that Dobbins will be active, and you'll likely have to just play Garrett Wilson, London, and Laporta there, Julian. And then your next team was, or your next league was also, would you play Vidal over Kupp in a full PPR? Only if Dobbins was out. That's the only time that I'd ever consider it. Emiliano in the chat says full PPR, 1 wide receiver, 1 flex, 1 tight end. Jerome Ford, Tyjae Spears, Juwan Jennings, Kupp, Jacoby Myers, Kraft, and Okonkwo. I mean, look, ultimately, the tight end is going to be Okonkwo. The wide receiver out of this group most likely ends up being either Kupp or Juwan Jennings, depending on how you want to approach it. Probably go with Jennings there. And then at running back, I'm probably going to lean in the direction of Tyjae Spears. Or specifically, not running back, but your flex. Thank you. Blue Jay sends in a question, says, okay, you had multiple questions, don't you, Blue Jay? Because I see okay, there it is. Says, it says, Andrew, I benched the Seahawks defense for the Raiders defense. Am I cooked? I mean, again, we'll have to wait and see. I don't know. Here's the thing. if you were to ask me, Andrew, how do you think the Seattle Seahawks versus Bears game is going to go? That's not what I would have predicted. I don't think anybody would have predicted a total of 9 points by the end of this day with 0 offensive touchdowns scored or even defensive touchdowns scored at that. So really, the unpredictability of some of these scenarios, I don't know what the Raiders are capable of. Certainly, we know that the offense for the Saints is fried themselves. So obviously, the Raiders defense has themselves an opportunity. As to whether they live up to that opportunity and take advantage of it, to be determined. As for your second question, says from Blue Jay, says also Bryce Young or Drake May for my championship. I'd rather play Drake May at this point. Thank you. Alrighty, we scroll down. What do we have here? Crispy says JSN and Charbonnet killed me. Yeah, imagine. The one, it's hilarious how this could happen where Kenneth Walker's like, all right, you know what? I'm going to the injured reserve, guys. I'll see you later. Charbonnet, you know, everyone, you guys will be in good hands with Charbonnet. Nope, absolutely not. They were running the ball well, but they didn't want to run anymore. I don't know what the game plan was, but after a while, they're like, you know what? Let's just ditch the running game altogether. Let's see here. What do we have? Enrique says, full PPR, pick 2. McMillan, Sutton, Spears, Ford, and Mooney. As it currently stands, I'd probably go with McMillan and Sutton in a full PPR format. Andrew 1183 says, hey, Drew, in a full PPR, Okonkwo, Ferguson, or Ertz, I'd rather go and play Okonkwo in that scenario. Thank you. Somebody has James Cook, Jennings, or Ford. Yeah, I'd rather just play James Cook there. Again, earlier today, I referenced to it when I was talking about Khalil Shakir in the wide receiver rankings episode. This is the thumbnail for it. It was dropped earlier today. Tomorrow, we'll have tight end and quarterback rankings posted on the channel for this week. But I referenced it in regards to in regards to Khalil Shakir's availability for this week. Considering the Bills are only 1 game ahead of the Baltimore Ravens, the expectation is that going into the next week, or specifically going into this week's game, in which, of course, the Bills need to win in order to advance themselves 1 more victory ahead. They need to secure this victory in order to make sure that they are the number 2 seed in the playoffs so they can avoid the Kansas City Chiefs at all potential possibilities up until the AFC Championship game. So they would like to not have to face the Baltimore Ravens, who will most likely have the number 3 seed within the AFC. So if they can do so, they'll win this week in order to, well, actually, yeah, technically they would avoid them. Assuming not a higher seed, well, if they're number 4, no, actually they can't avoid them. Regardless, well, yeah, if they're going to take on the Baltimore Ravens, they can't avoid the Ravens. They're going to avoid the Chiefs and take on the Ravens, and at least by winning this game, secure home field advantage because in the head-to-head, they lost to the Ravens earlier this season. Thank you. All right, let's see here. Scroll down. Andrew Pacina sends in a question. Says, Eagles defense or the Dolphins defense playing for the chip? As of right now, I think I'd rather play the Eagles defense. Without CeeDee Lamb out there, who's going to do any damage to that Eagles defense as a whole? I don't expect the running game to find much success. So Dowdle's going to be in a little bit of trouble. And, the only primary passing threat that was a consistent option, quite frankly, was CeeDee Lamb. Honestly, between those two, I'd lean towards the Eagles as of right now. Let's see here. Sam says, someone please ask if I start Chuba or Debo. Okay. I'll answer that right now. Let me go pull up my rankings. The question, Sam, is what is your scoring format ultimately? Because if we're talking about like a full PPR, I'd probably just play Debo there. If it's a half standard, I'd go with Chuba. I think it just depends on how your format is currently constructed. Anonymous says, playing against JSN and I had DJ, 9.2 could be worse. I'll take it. Yeah, I mean, that's the worst. Okay, as bad as it is, whenever we're playing fantasy football and then you think to yourself, well, it could have been worse. That is not how we want to, that's not how we want to feel by the end of a given game. But hey, this is the situation that we're, unfortunately in at this point. Someone said Colts or Dolphins defense. I'm leaning back towards the Colts defense there. Leo Gemez sends in a question. Let's see here, Leo. Let's see what you have here. Type in the chat. Leo says in a full PPR, but there's nothing attached to it. All I see in the chat, Leo, is full PPR. If you have a question, retype it in. Thank you. Somebody asked Jerome Ford or Rachaad White. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, let me just check my current rankings. As it currently stands, I have Rachaad White 1 spot ahead of Jerome Ford in a half PPR. In a full PPR, I have Jerome Ford ranked higher. So it just depends on the format that you're in. Let's hear. Tom Bigsby says, would you do Achane in the rain or Bucky Irving PPR? In a PPR format, it's a little bit tricky because the point per reception factor of Achane is so valuable that I kind of still want to lean in that direction. But if it's going to be like a horribly tempered weather game, like it's just going to be a muddy mess in Cleveland, at that point, I would just play Bucky Irving. Freddie says, if Njoku is cleared, still play him over Chin. Who's Chin? Philippos says, I got forced into starting DK Metcalf with Connor and Neighbors being iffy. But Seattle defense saved me. Starting DK because, yeah, I saw that earlier today in regards to Neighbors being like a quote-unquote game time decision. I don't know, man. It's getting very interesting here in the final week. You would think that these are like the week 18 antics of some of these teams, but ultimately the fact that we are experiencing them in week 17 is truly brutal. Dre Play says, if Pollard sits, would you play Spears over James Conner? Yes, I would. Or if Pollard doesn't sit, if he doesn't sit, I would play James Conner. Earlier today, we got a practice report from an insider from like the local Arizona area, in which they're like a team reporter. They said that James Conner was running around normally prior to practice. So while the media was still there available, they did see him running around. So James Conner is probably expected to play come this upcoming Saturday, in the night game against the LA Rams. So in this scenario, if Pollard would be active, I would play James Conner ahead of Spears there. Thank you. Let's see here. Subdrew, Superflex. Which quarterback do I start? Young, Penix, AOC, or Rudolph? I prefer to play Young out of those available options. Rudolph would be the second best in my opinion. Max Keller says Burrow or Jaden Daniels. I have Chase stack. Ultimately, even with the Chase stack, I prefer to play Jaden Daniels there. Jaden Daniels' rushing upside is purely the difference maker as to whether or not I would go in that direction. So, I'll lean towards that as of right now. Leo Gamma says, Mixon and Schultz sold me. Yep. It's not even just Mixon and Schultz. The whole Houston Texans team took the day off. Anyway, says, help me finalize my lineup. I have Goff, Saquon, Connor, Puka, Neighbors, Schultz. Flex is Debo and Mixon. Got it. Bench is Bo Nix, Shakir, Dowdle, and McMillan. Yeah, I mean, look, as of right now, there isn't anything that you can feasibly change. The only difference that could potentially be made going forward is in the event in which Connor doesn't play, you would theoretically just, I guess you'd have to play Dowdle at that point as your second running back. Hopefully you started Mixon as a starting running back and not in the flex position, because if you had started him in the flex position, it gives you a little bit less, kind of variability in terms of playing McMillan, who would be the preferred over Dowdle. But in the event in which Connor's out, I mean, Dowdle will be the next man up. Otherwise, everything else stays there. Thank you, Leo. All right, Football is Life sends in a question. Says, dumb question in the chat. LOL started Mixon and Sharp. Yeah, that is as brutal as it gets, brother. That is as brutal as it gets. We know that short week games typically are going to be rough because, again, the players in those games physically are worn down. But these are just, it's just not fun to watch. Like, I was completely checked out in that second half. I did not want to watch this game anymore. Football's Life says, 2-week PPR playoffs. I have 180. He has 150. He has Darnold, Gibbs, Chase, Pollard, Sutton, Kendra Miller. I have remaining Allen, Amon-Ra St. Brown, A.J. Brown, Saquon, and Bowers. Do you think I pull it off? I mean, you have a pretty good team, and additionally, you have a really strong lead already. It says, do I start Addison over A.J. Brown? No, I wouldn't start Addison over A.J. Brown. I would not do that. But as for the rest of it, I think you have a pretty good shot because of your 30-point lead and, of course, the players you currently have on roster. Thank you. Let's see here. CJ504 sends in a question, says, I had Nico and Kaimi Fairbairn. Yeah, imagine Kaimi Fairbairn with the 0 point after all this incredible performances over the course of the season. Absolutely brutal. Says, off to a bad start. Do I start Jordan Love and Jaden Reed for the shootout upside, or play it safe with Herbert and Ladd McConkey? Still have Gibbs, JT, and Chase Brown. If I was you, I would stay safe with the Herbert and Ladd McConkey. The issue that Jordan Love and Jaden Reed presents is purely just Josh Jacobs. If Josh Jacobs shows up feeling dangerous and takes over the game, he's the one that's going to leave the game with 3 touchdowns, right? So the unfortunate nature of that situation is that the rushing upside of their running back truly just holds them behind in terms of their potential of reaching said upside. So for right now, I would just lean towards that Herbert-Ladd combo. LJ says, I started starting both Evans and McMillan. Now that CeeDee Lamb is out, who do I flex between Shakir and Abdullah? I'd probably still stick with Shakir there as long as it's some sort of PPR, half or full. Ernest says Young or May at quarterback. If I'm not mistaken, scratch that. I have Bryce Young 1 spot ahead of Drake May this week. 17 in comparison to 18. I think I told someone earlier to play Drake May. No. Scratch that one. I just looked at my Patreon rankings from earlier today that was posted. I have Bryce Young 1 spot ahead. Thank you. Rosa says, tricky playoffs so far. Everyone is questionable. Yeah, I mean, they're not just questionable. People are going out, which are like primetime players. Like, legitimately, I actually thought that we should have seen Gus Edwards playing this week and playing well. Nope, that's not the case. CeeDee Lamb, who, again, for all intents and purposes, has really, still been solid in the absence of Dak Prescott. Now they're shutting him down for the season. It's rough. B for Work says, could you please get a sneak peek of defensive rankings, Andrew? As for the potential of defensive rankings, it's not going to variably change much in comparison to what it was when we did the Wednesday morning live stream. Yesterday morning, we live streamed here on the channel for 2 hours. I had all rankings on screen at running back, wide receiver, tight end, quarterback, kicker, defense. I mean, it's still going to be in the same kind of concept where probably I go like Indianapolis 1, Eagles 2, Miami 3, Buffalo 4, Chargers 5, Raiders 6, Vikings 7, Jaguars 8, Titans 9, Rams 10. Like that would be a top 10 defense for the remainder of games. Of course, we're excluding any of the Seahawks, Baltimore Ravens, Kansas City Chiefs defenses who have already played and we've started. Let's see here. Courtney sends the question, says, Hurts is out. Hurts out. Well, if he's out. So should I start Bo Nix or Bryce Young? I'd prefer to play Bo Nix there. Alexander Madison or Estime, I'd prefer to play Alexander Madison there. Reed, Thielen, or Booty, I'd rather play Thielen there. Thank you very much. Yeah, that would be the 3. So in the event in which Jalen Hurts, once again tomorrow, we get a clear indication that he's not able to clear the concussion protocol, at that point you would play you would play Bo Nix, Alexander Madison, and Adam Thielen. Thank you, Courtney. Oscar says Dobbins or Ladd McConkey in the flex full PPR. If Dobbins is starting this week and he is at a full go, and we can get like a pretty good indication of that based on the coaching and the coaching staff, specifically within the upcoming interviews that they have, typically on Friday afternoons. If we can get a pretty good kind of indication that he is going to be ready, unleashed, and good to go, I would prefer to play Dobbins there. But until we can get that kind of indication that he's going to be unleashed and he's fully healthy and he's back and ready to go, I would just have Ladd McConkey in the lineup until then, because there's still a chance that Dobbins doesn't even play this week. We'll have to wait and see what his status looks like. Let's hear Shockers in the chat says, if Pollard plays, would you play Spears instead half PPR? If Pollard plays, would I play Spears instead? No, I wouldn't. As it currently stands, I have them very closely ranked. Like in a half PPR, let's see, where do I have them? In a half PPR, Dobbins is 17 and Spears is 18 of the remaining running backs. They're back-to-back, but I would not play Spears ahead of him, mainly because, again, if he's playing, then the implication is that he is going to be the early down back as it typically is. Now, taking on the Jacksonville Jaguars, it's very much so different in comparison to the most recent matchups. Like this most recent week, taking on the Colts, when you're down 30 points, you ditch the running game. So if that's going to happen again this week, then sure, Spears will be the better play. But in the event in which they do not have to ditch the running game because they're not down 30 points, and in fact they're up points, we may see a little bit more Tony Pollard in terms of that situation. Somebody said Vidal or Abdullah. It depends purely on J.K. Dobbins' status. If Dobbins is active, then you play Abdullah. If he's inactive, then you play Vidal. Let's hear Max in the chat says, I have Collins, Mixon, and Butker. They already played. My opponent only has had Lamar play so far. If Tracy or Adams doesn't play, should I start Olave? I don't know what your alternative options are away from them. Like if Tracy doesn't play at that point, I just go pick up Singletary. In the event in which Adams doesn't play, then sure, we can go ahead and roll with Olave. I think both of them will play, but in the event in which they don't, make sure you have Singletary kind of potentially picked up for Tracy's absence. Someone said Madison or Abdullah. I'd rather have Madison. Again, he is the early down running back. And when you take on the Saints, again, the best matchup at the running back position in regards to rushing statistics, I think it does give him the clear advantage in that scenario. Tyler says, Andrew, good stuff here. Would you go with Jennings or Sutton as your wide receiver 2 in the championship? I would prefer to play Sutton as of right now. The overall usage that Jennings has been exposed to over the course of the last couple weeks here, not the greatest in comparison to what they are going to potentially have this week with Deebo Samuel and Kittle once again being the primary 1-2 options. It's not to say that Jennings isn't going to find success. It's that comparatively to Courtland Sutton. I mean, Courtland is clearing away the number 1 and is not really a conversation within that offense. I would know for sure, like, I have more trust that he will get the volume of opportunity he needs in comparison to Jennings. R009 says Purdy, Rodgers, Stafford, or Young if Hurts doesn't play. In the event in which he doesn't, you would play Purdy there. Rob Castle says, would you play Rico versus Philadelphia or Ford versus Miami? As of right now, in my own home league, like the main league that I play in, I'm in the championships. I have to make that exact same decision. I currently have Ford in my starting lineup. Ever since we got news earlier today that Lamb is not playing, I have no interest in playing any Cowboys this week. Sure, I might consider playing Jake Ferguson, but outside of that kind of scenario, I have no interest in playing any Cowboys, including Rico Dowdle in this scenario. So I currently have Ford in my starting lineup even though he plays against Miami. I don't love this scenario, but as of right now, I do think that he is the better play of the two. Tristan says, unfortunately, I started Sharps at the flex and Henry as my RB1. So for RB2, do I play Jacobs or Irving? Oh, brother, why would... brother, you should not have played Sharps. As of right now, between those two, I don't think there's a wrong answer. I'd probably just play Jacobs there because it's a guaranteed touchdown minimum. Let's see here. Cardiac says Sharps, Keenan Allen, and Schultz. Yeah, you're pretty much screwed, brother. That is unfortunate. Let's see here. Austin Hoover sends in a question. Says played Mixon, and I have CeeDee Lamb. I need to pick two in a PPR: Jennings, Debo, Chuba, or pick up Thielen for tomorrow. If it's a full PPR and it's my team, I'm probably playing Thielen and Chuba, honestly, or Thielen and Debo. Either way, Thielen has to play, so I'd pick him up. Thank you. Philip R sends in a question. Says Rashad White or Drake London a half PPR. I'd probably play Drake London there as of right now. Thank you. KB sends in a question. Says, what's up? With the bad fantasy outputs, I mean, it's just the kind of season it is, right? It's not even that it's not even just like quote unquote bad fantasy outputs. It's just shitty football. That's what it is. What's with the bad football? I mean, really, there's a conversation to be had. Is it the offensive ineptness or is it the lack of consistent offensive line play? Because honestly, the Bears' offense should be significantly better, but they just don't have an offensive line to be able to function, unfortunately. And additionally, they also don't have a decent play caller or decision makers, and they don't have an accurate quarterback. There's many of factors that go into the situation, but at the end of the day, it's below par football. That's why I have a hard time watching it in the first place. But yeah, I wish that these stats still held up to what 2020 presented. If you guys remember back in 2020 when there was no fans in the stands and every offense was tearing it up. I mean, they broke every single record that year for like total passing yards, total points scored within a season. Like, it was ridiculous. Unfortunately, we don't live in that reality anymore. We live in a reality in which we just have terrible football games on a consistent basis more often than not, honestly. Somebody asked Jennings or Thielen. I'd prefer to play Thielen there. EA says JSN and Keenan Allen burn me. I need high upside advice. So what's your question, EA? Let's see here. Lord Tev says Coker or Laporta in the flex. I'd rather play Laporta there. Donald Smith says Purdy, Murray, or Tua Tagovailoa. I would rather play Murray there. Ace24 says start two. Myers, Ford, Spears, Madison, Hawkinson. Depends on multiple factors. If Pollard doesn't play, you play Spears with Myers. Otherwise, you play Myers with Madison. Most likely. Assuming it's a full PPR. Let's see here. Christian K says, I played Fairbairn and Keenan Allen. I have Hurts, Higgins, and Njoku, who might not play. I'm cooked facing the best team for the chip. Yeah, at that point, you better have hoped that you decided to gentleman's agreement and split the winnings by the end of the season, because you are fried, brother. That is so unfortunate. I'm sorry, Christian. That is rough. Twisted Folks is in a half PPR, pick two, running backs plus one flex, Bijan, HN, Bucky, BTJ. Cool. Of those available options in a half PPR scoring format, I would play, let me see where I have BTJ in comparison to these alternatives in my flex rankings, and I'll let you know. As it currently stands, all three running backs are ranked higher, so I would play all three running backs there. Thank you. Box of Juice says, 4-point per passing touchdown league. Do I start Goff or Richardson or Young? I'd rather play Goff out of these available options. Thank you. Peace Dog says, should we just add punters to fantasy? I've seen some very interesting fantasy leagues in my time. I've seen punters. I've seen a league where you don't draft the running backs. You actually just draft an offense and you get all of the rushing statistics from that team. I've seen some very interesting things. As for adding punting to the conversation, I mean, that's a completely different game. That's not even fantasy at that point. So I guess to each their own, but I'm not interested in something like that. Let's see here. We scroll down. Will Lutz or Tyler Bass? I have Will Lutz ranked higher as of right now. Okay, we took care of that. Akash says Jalen McMillan or Garrett Wilson, half PPR. I'd prefer to play McMillan there. Akash, thank you. Ron Garcia says start Tua, Rodgers, or Bryce Young. I prefer to play Tua out of those available options, assuming the weather is not a complete disaster. If it's the most potentially heavy rain outcome, then we could pivot to playing Bryce Young. As of right now, when we look towards Sunday, let's see, week 17. Let me see when the Dolphins play in comparison to the Carolina Panthers. Yeah. So as of right now, the Dolphins play at 1:05 p.m. PST, and the Carolina Panthers play 3 hours before that. So you'd really just have to kind of throw it up to the fantasy gods as to whether or not you want to start Tua in a rain scenario. I don't mind the situation. Again, a lot of his overall usage as a passer is just quick RPO, get the ball out of his hands, dump it off to, guys like Achane, Jonnu Smith, 5 to 10 yards downfield at max. If anything, sometimes just literally just toss it forward 1 or 2 yards and just let them run. So I'm not too worried about that scenario in this circumstance. But again, if the weather's going to be a huge problem, then we could just pivot to playing Bryce Young in the morning and not have to worry about it. But I'm not sure how that's going to pan out as of yet. Weather's been very difficult to predict as of the last couple weeks here. Let's see here. Tracy White or Ford, says Jesse Ramirez. Of those available, assuming Tracy's healthy, he would be the preferred. Otherwise, you just play Jerome Ford there. Gabriel says, I'm cooked. CeeDee Lamb in 2 of my 3 championship teams. Yeah, that's rough, brother. That is really rough. The worst part of that is that it's not only that you lose CeeDee Lamb, it's that there's not another Cowboys wide receiver that we can 100% say is going to be able to, garner all of the opportunity share that would have gone towards CeeDee Lamb. Like, we could point towards Brandon Cooks or Jalen Tolbert or, Kevontae Turpin and hope, but ultimately there's no guarantee that either of those 3 are able to succeed in his absence, which is really the worst part of it. Someone said BTJ or Kamara. Regardless of whether Kamara plays, I'm playing BTJ there. All right, Box of Juice says, going to start Goff. Flex Neighbors or Jameson Williams. Purely dependent on Jameson Williams / Neighbors status. Neighbors earlier today said that he was going to be a game time decision for Sunday. That obviously doesn't bode well, but if he's active, then he's in my lineup. Otherwise, I think if Neighbors wants to sit out, great. We have a pretty good solid alternative option to pivot to in that scenario, Box. Thank you. Anthony says, Vidal, Abdullah, Bigsby, or Tracy, half PPR. So the Vidal would start there in the event in which J.K. Dobbins was inactive this week. Otherwise, in the event in which he is not, you play Bigsby. Thank you. Wonton says McMillan or Garrett Wilson in the flex. I'd rather play McMillan there. I know it's been hard to trust Wilson. Yeah, it's not just been difficult to trust Wilson. It's that it's difficult to trust Aaron Rodgers will get the ball to Wilson. Like last week, there's quite literally a play, 4th down in 5 or 8 yards. Garrett Wilson runs a perfect slant route over the middle of the field. There's not a single defender within 4 yards of him. Aaron Rodgers doesn't even look to him, throws it straight to Aaron Rodgers, incomplete. I mean, straight towards Devontae Adams, incomplete. It's just a matter of Aaron Rodgers wants to get the ball to his best friend. He'll do whatever he can to do so, and really just doesn't care about everybody else on the team. That's just what it's become, unfortunately. Pollard or Rachaad White? If Pollard is active, you play him there. Obviously, if he's inactive, the answer is, kind of made for you at that point. Frenzy 40K says full PPR. I need one out of Madison, Spears, or Arizona starter Connor. Yeah, look, as of right now, I would anticipate that Connor's going to play on Saturday based on the practice reports over the course of the last 2 days and the reports that I have specifically read from beat writers of the Arizona Cardinals. So I would expect Connor to play. Once we get to Saturday and the status of him is active, you'll play him over Madison and Spears. Okay, we took care of that. Dom says Anthony Richardson or Bryce Young this week. I'd prefer to play Anthony Richardson there. Thank you. Let's see here. Joseph says in a full PPR, pick 2 running backs, Gibbs or Bucky, or Jacobs or Chase. Okay, so if I'm going to pick between those 2 groups, Gibbs has to play over Bucky. Oh, okay, wait, yeah. Assuming it's not Gibbs and Bucky, and the or is correct, I'd rather play Gibbs over Bucky. And between Jacobs and Chase Brown in a full PPR, I'd still play with, Jacobs in my lineup. So Gibbs and Jacobs would be the 2. Matty Vision says, thinking of replacing Thielen with Debo. Thoughts? I don't have a problem with that. As long as Debo scores a touchdown, he'll live up to the potential of what Thielen could theoretically produce as well. Considering, again, as it currently stands, Thielen has less target competition. It does give him an advantage inherently. But, again, that secondary for the for the Detroit Lions, they've had their fair share of injuries as of late, which definitely gives Debo the opportunity to potentially have himself another solid game. Now, again, this most recent week, he scored a touchdown mainly because he quite literally ran through 3 grown-ass men. I don't know if you guys saw that play. Debo Samuel is just different. He really is. When given the opportunity, the guy is different. He catches the ball over the middle. Boom, runs somebody over. Boom, makes another tackle. Breaks the 3rd one and touchdown. Like, I don't even know how that's possible physically, but hey, he just does it, so I don't mind it. JMac27 says in a half PPR, need 2 running backs and a flex from following Kyron, Chase Brown, Bucky, Evans, BTJ. In a half PPR, as it currently stands, let me see where I have the wide receivers comparatively. I have all 3 running backs ranked higher. I'd rather play Kyron, Chase Brown, and Bucky Irving there. J-Mac, thank you. EA says in a half PPR, TJ Hawkinson or Chikezimo Okonkwo. I'd rather play Chikezimo Okonkwo. And pick 2 between Ford, Kupp, McMillan, and Thielen. So right now, I'd probably lean towards the direction of going like Thielen and Ford. As of right now, I could convince myself to go Thielen and Kupp. I don't know. I got to think about Kupp for the next 24 to 48 hours here. Bills or Raiders defense. As it currently stands, I'm pretty sure. Let me check. I have the Bills defense ranked higher. Mainly because the offense of the... Quite frankly, the offense of the Jets is just far too inconsistent, and they just don't score enough points. So when we're just talking about the base value, so you know how in fantasy football, every week we start off with 10 points when they're, that defense has held their opposing team to 0 points. The points that will potentially just be inherited passively in that category definitely does favor the Bills. Now, again, the Raiders do take on the Saints. As to what kind of a Saints team we'll see, again, that is to be determined. We're waiting on the status of Derek Carr and or Alvin Kamara. I don't expect either to play, but we're still waiting on it because if both them go and so does Olave, we have a completely different conversation on hand there. Prohibit sends in a question. Thank you very much, Prohibit. Says Josh Allen or Bo Nix. Are we concerned about Allen? Nope, no concerns about Allen in my opinion. As for your next question, play 2, Myers, Shakir, McMillan, J-Mo. As it currently stands, my 2 highest of those 4 would be McMillan and J-Mo. Thank you. Okay, D-Rock says I dropped tight end Kelsey. Oops. Played Charbonnet. Another oops. Damn, that is right. You dropped Kelsey? Jeez. That is a rough one. It is funny, though, that Kelsey, it takes him, he takes a full 5 weeks off. He's like, guys, don't worry about it. I'm not going to do anything. Week 17, he's like, guys, I'm going to score the most points I've scored in the last month, in the last 4 weeks combined in 1 week. Classic. Angel Martinez says, hey, Andrew, thoughts on my team? 12-team super, is that as a super team or super flex? Full PPR, we have Allen, Darnold, Brady, H.N. Brown, JT, Brian Robinson Jr., Charbonnet, Evan St. Brown, Debo Wilson. Yep, you got a pretty strong team. Picking up Brady certainly is a bold strategy, but I would say that it's a pretty good idea. Again, if I think the only service right now that Tom Brady is available is on ESPN Fantasy. If you guys need the GOAT to be in your locker room, he doesn't have to start for you. He'll sit on the bench. But if you're trying to let your players elevate to the next level, bringing in, picking up the GOAT for your locker room is not a bad idea for morale purposes. Not moral. Thomas McBride says, any confidence that Dobbins starts Saturday? Yeah, I have a lot of confidence. As it currently stands, I have Dobbins ranked. I don't think that they hold out Gus this week in the event in which Dobbins is not available for them. So as of right now, I am under the assumption that Dobbins will end up playing. Currently, where I have him ranked in a half PPR is RB17. So he would be just behind guys like Hubbard, Breece Hall, Brian Robinson, James Conner. Then it would go with J.K. Dobbins of those available options. Let's see here. Jay Gar sends in a question. Let's see if I can find your question in the live chat, Jay. Says in a full PPR flex, McMillan, Debo, or J-Mo. As of those 3, I'd go with Debo Samuel there. As for your next question, says start Dobbins, White, or Garendo. I would play Dobbins, assuming he's active. Thank you. All right, let's see here. McMillan, Dowdle, or Jonnu Smith in a PPR flex. As of right now, I'd go with McMillan there. Amrit. Enrique says if Dobbins doesn't play in a full PPR, Vidal, Sutton, or McMillan, pick 2. In the event in which, if Dobbins doesn't play, would I play Vidal over those 2 in a full PPR? I don't mind the idea of going like Sutton, Vidal there. That would be the combo of the 2 that I'd roll with. Overseas says Breece Hall, Jerome Ford, James Conner, which 2? Under the assumption that James Conner plays on Saturday, I would lean with James Conner and Breece Hall as the 1-2 combo. All right, Christian K sends in a question. Says, in a full PPR, top 2 wide receivers, if healthy, Thielen, Olave, Debo, Addison, Waddle. Of those available, assuming everyone is healthy, my top 2 options in terms of suggestions are probably Thielen and Addison. The number 3 option will be Debo. Thank you. As for your next question, says also Kincaid or Strange, if no Njoku. In the event in which we have no Njoku, at that point, I'd probably just play Kincaid. Thank you. Anonymous says, think I'm going to pick up Brady as well. Just to have the veteran presence. Atta baby. There you go. Let's see here. Pyro says, full PPR, Pollard, Spears, or Ford. Pick 1. It depends on Pollard's status. If Pollard is active, I'd probably lean in his direction. In the event in which he is not, at that point, I'd play Spears. IC4 Runner says Richardson or Tua. I'd prefer to play Richardson. Jack says started Schultz and Keenan for my championship. We had a great run, boys. Yep, 07. The salute, brother. Rel says full PPR flex, JMO or McMillan. JMO, Jonnu, or McMillan. I'd probably just go McMillan there as of right now. If the weather's going to be a disaster for that Jonnu game, I might want to lean away from it. But if the weather's solid, depending on the issue is that we're not going to know until 3 hours beforehand because you have to play McMillan. I just probably play McMillan there. Unless you want to go in if you want to play Jonnu, the way you would go about it theoretically would be you wait for that 1 p.m. Sunday game, PST, to start. You'll look at the weather prior to the game starting, and if in fact it's bad enough to where you're not interested, then you'd pivot to playing Jameson on Monday. Mr. 305 says in a full PPR, pick, let's see here, Dowdle, Kendra Miller, or Vidal if both are out. In the event in which everyone is out, injured, ready to go, Vidal is the better play, or the best play of the bunch. Jaden Reed or Jameson Williams, as of right now, I'd go with JMO. Garrett Wilson or Jerome Ford PPR? Dude, I think I'm going to just play Jerome Ford there. Okay, we took care of that. G Medina says questions in the chat. Thanks, Andrew. All right, G Medina, let's see what you have, brother. Medina, I don't see anything in the live chat, brother. So if you can do me a favor and retype in that question, that'd be greatly appreciated. Green Screen Man says, which do I start as my wide receiver 2? My options are Thielen and McMillan. I'd play Thielen there. If Dobbins plays, do I bench between the two of the receivers? If Dobbins plays, who do I bench between the two receivers? In the event in which Dobbins plays, you'd bench McMillan. Thank you. All right, G Medina says, is there any concerns with starting James Cook? Possible rest for starters. Okay, so look, I looked at it earlier today. In terms of the NFL records, NFL week. All right, let's see here. NFL standings. All right, so let's just think about it objectively, okay? Just so we're all on the same page. As of right now, the Buffalo Bills are 12-3, correct? The Ravens are 11-5, correct? So let's say, for example, the Bills were to not win this week, okay? They sat all their starters. They would go to 12-4, correct? Then subsequently after, in week 18, if they were to sit all their starters again and they lose again, they'd go to 12-5. Then at that point, there's a possibility that the Ravens start everyone next week, win, and then have a tied 12-5 record with the Bills, and then subsequently have the number 2 seed within the NFL AFC side of the bracket. So they will not have to face the Chiefs, theoretically, until the AFC Championship game. And they would have home field advantage against the Bills because they have the head-to-head tiebreaker regardless of a tied record because they beat them in the regular season. So ultimately, the Bills have to win just one more game. They win this week, it's over. It's done. They can pack it in. They sit everybody in week 18. So unless they want to specifically win the week 18 matchup in comparison to this one based on the health of their team, I would not anticipate them to sit their roster because, again, there is a possibility that they could lose a potential home field advantage against the Ravens, which they will most likely end up having to face within the NFL playoff kind of seeding. Because again, there's reseeding in the NFL playoffs. So the number 1 seed will always play the lowest seed that is 1. So there's the highest likelihood is that the Chiefs in the second round of the playoffs will either take on the 4, 5, 6, or 7 seed, whichever one of those want to emerge. And on the other side of the bracket, it will probably be the Bills taking on the Ravens in that, second round of the playoffs. And home field advantage is certainly going to make a huge difference as to which one of those two teams is going to emerge. Overseas sends in a question. Let's see if I can find it. I think I answered one of your questions earlier today. I did answer one of yours. Let's see if you had another one. You asked Breece Hall, Jerome Ford, James Conner. Yeah, I lean towards the direction of Conner and Breece Hall there. Do you have any other questions overseas? If you did, just go ahead and type it in the chat. Somebody asked Jonnu Smith or Chigoziem Okonkwo. Depends on weather. As of right now, I'm leaning towards Jonnu. But by the time I get to Sunday morning or even Saturday afternoon's rankings, again, this upcoming Saturday, technically, if you're on the West Coast, it will be a morning stream. If you're on the East Coast, it'll be an afternoon stream. This upcoming Saturday, like we did last week, I'm starting the stream at 8 a.m. PST because there are 3 games on Saturday, so we'll have up-to-date rankings on screen. I will also have rankings on screen for Sunday morning starting at 7 a.m. So if you guys want to swing on by and get those official rankings by then, we'll be good to go. By tomorrow, we will have a full indication as to the status of a lot of these players that are still in question. Pollard, Jalen Hurts, Kamara, J.K. Dobbins, Neighbors, etc. There are going to be many of players that are still up in the air, and we'll have a little bit more of a clarity on their current status. And at that point, we'll be pretty comfortable. As we get closer to, obviously the Saturday and Sunday games, we'll also get a little bit more of a clearer picture as to the weather situations on hand. Thank you. All right, let's hear. Thomas Dabney sends in a question. Says, Allen is an auto start. Achane, Jacobs, Chase, Cup, Hawkinson, Ladd, Neighbors, game day. Okay. Bills defense. I have the Eagles on the bench. Yeah, I would rather play the Eagles defense there. Marvin Harrison, Garrett Wilson, Laporta. Yeah, as of right now, I'd rather play Laporta over Hawkinson. And in the event in which Neighbors does not play, you would just pivot to playing probably Garrett Wilson at that point. Thank you, Thomas. Appreciate it. Mr. Tres Cerro Cinco sends in a follow-up. Says, full PPR Cup, sucking lately, or Romeo Dobbs in a shootout. I don't know if I can trust Romeo Dobbs that much. If you want to roll with it, you certainly can. I don't know if I can go as far as to suggest them, though, as of right now, going into this week. Carlos Medina says defense, Bills, Miami, Colts. Between the three of them, I'd go as of right now because, again, the rankings will change as we get to closer to Sunday. But as of right now, I have it as Colts 1, Miami 2, and the Bills 3. Weather absolutely plays a big part of that as well. Yes, you are correct, Carlos. KGYM says, in a 1 point per reception league, Neighbors, Dobbins, or Myers. In the event in which Dobbins is active this week, I would just outright play him. If he's not, then I just go Neighbors as the second best option. Diego Gutierrez sends in a question. Thank you, Diego. I appreciate it. Let's see if I can find your question in the chat, Diego. Oh, that's not what I wanted to do. Diego says, Jerome Ford, Rico Dowdle, Tracy, rank them. Yeah, as it currently stands, the way that I would go about it, assuming they're all healthy, Jerome Ford 1, Tracy 2, Rico Dowdle 3. So if you were going to play two of them, Tracy and Ford would be the way that I go about it. Okay, Rob says, do you feel they will use Connor fully, even though they are out of the playoffs? I don't know. I think it depends, right? There are some certain contract negotiation incentives where looking at, let me see James Conner's stats. So as it currently stands, James Conner already has 1,090 rushing yards. If there was theoretically going to be an incentive, it would be at the 1,000-yard marker or potentially even double-digit touchdown marker, which at this point I'm pretty sure he's reached that in terms of his rushing and receiving touchdowns this season. He needs one more receiving touchdown to get to 10 total. Unless there's some sort of incentive. Again, I don't know why they would play him either. I don't get it. Unless, he's actually fully healthy and he's just a competitor and he wants to go out there and, ball out. Blue Jay says if Otten is out, McMillan or Cup in a full PPR. Oh, that one's tough. I think if we get a confirmation that Otten's out, McMillan probably is the better play considering the consistency as of late. Which it sucks to, sit Cup. The week that we all sit him, he'll probably go off for 20 points because, that's just the logic of fantasy football. Mason says on a half PPR, McMillan, Smith, or Jaden Reed. Which two? As of right now, I'd lean towards Devontae Smith and McMillan there in a half PPR. Billy Mack says, thoughts on kickers to start, Reichard or Elliott? I'd probably lean towards playing Reichard there still. I have them both in my top 10 rankings, but Reichard is definitely still higher. Slime says, should I flex J-Mo, Jennings, or Jerome Ford, or Olave? As of right now, depending on the scoring format, if we're talking about a full PPR, I'd be pretty comfortable just going J-Mo. Well, actually, I'll probably, in a full PPR, go Jennings. In a half PPR, I could consider going J-Mo or Jerome Ford, depending on how I want to play it. But in a half PPR, typically I would look for that kind of higher upside. I'd probably go Ford and a half and Jennings in a full. PPR Evans or Breece Hall. I'd rather go Evans there. Thank you. Anthony in the chat says half PPR, Neighbors, Thielen, Mooney, or McMillan. As of right now, Neighbors and Thielen would be the number 1 and 2 combo. In the event in which Neighbors is out, you play McMillan alongside of Thielen. Max Keller says in a full point PPR, pick 2 between A.J. Brown, Aaron Jones, Jennings, and Jameson Williams. A.J. Brown and Aaron Jones would be the 2 players. Dylan says Johnny Smith or Pollard, full PPR. In the event in which Pollard is active, he starts. Evans or Breece Hall? Yeah, give me Evans there. RG says flex, full PPR. Wilson, Cup, Ford, McMillan, and or Spears. Spears only plays above the rest in the event in which Pollard is out. Otherwise, as of right now, I'd just go with Cup. All right, David Morgan sends in a question. Thank you, David. I appreciate it. It says Superflex, PPR, I need 3. Stafford, Rodgers, Ridley, Mooney. Stafford, Rodgers, Ridley, Mooney. Superflex. Am I going to play one of these wide receivers over a quarterback in a Superflex? Probably not. If I was in your position, I'd go Stafford, Rodgers, and Ridley. That's the way that I'd go about it. Thank you. McLaughlin or Aubrey? I currently have McLaughlin ranked higher. Yeah, I have McLaughlin as my number 3. And considering CeeDee Lamb is out, I would probably lessen the overall ranking of Aubrey going into this weekend. Nick says in a half PPR, Debo Samuel or Pollard in the flex. That one becomes a little bit trickier. That one becomes very, very tricky. I think my conventional wisdom would say to just roll with the running back in that scenario. But as of right now, considering how much I want to play Debo, I would probably just suggest that you play Debo there in the event in which Pollard is active. Follow-up says Rob Castle, says, do I play Connor out of the playoffs or Jerome Ford? I'd rather play Connor. Again, here's the thing, guys. I can only here's the issue. This is why we don't play in week 18 in specific. When it comes to teams that are already eliminated from the NFL playoffs, okay? There is always a possibility, theoretically speaking, in which there are, contract negotiation, like incentives where, if you surpass this many yards or you get this many receptions or you score this many touchdowns, you have an extra incentive to why you want to play, right? Or you want to make the Pro Bowl, so you want to, you're trying to play more. There's always the potential in which those kind of factors will play in. Or there may be factors in which the team's like, all right, we're already kind of packing it in. We're not going to play you as much. Those are things that, again, we're not 100% privy to. Sure, we are aware of what potential incentives are associated with some of these contracts, but ultimately, we don't know how these coaching staffs want to approach some of these scenarios with some of these players. So a lot of it is just speculatory. Usually in week 17, we've never really had these kind of struggles to where we're wondering if these guys are going to play even though they've been eliminated, because typically they'd play and in week 18 they take the rest of the offseason off. But as of late, it certainly has been pretty tricky to kind of decipher what exactly is going to happen. But luckily, we have until Saturday and Sunday to figure out the status of these players, as they will be noted by tomorrow's injury report. Jocelyn says, what order would you place Neighbors, Jennings, and London in a full PPR? And if JK is out, would Vidal surpass Garendo and Madison? If JK Dobbins was out, yes, I would play Vidal over Garendo and Madison. As for your 3 prior mentioned receivers, I'd probably go Neighbors, London, Jennings in that order, assuming they're all healthy, ready to go. Again, we're still not certain of the status of Neighbors and London. Those are still up in the air as of right now. Jesse Ramirez says, Herbert, Richardson, or Young? I'd rather play Herbert there out of those available. David Morgan says, so here we go. Says, I need 4, Ridley, Kupp, Mooney, Adams, Addison, thanks. If Adams is healthy, and everybody in this conversation is healthy, the order in which I would go about it would be Adams 1, Addison 2, Ridley 3, and Kupp 4. Eric sends in a question, says championship, Kyler or Anthony Richardson. As of right now, Anthony Richardson popped up on the injury report today, which is a little bit startling. And there were a couple reports that I specifically read that were saying that the team's not 100%, they don't have 100% confidence that he may play this week. I'm like, what the heck? Why did this all of a sudden come out of nowhere? So we'll have to wait and see. As of right now, Kyler would be ahead of him. I have a slight projection to win by 53 to 47%. Do you play Pollard or Spears over Jennings or was that Mooney? Would I play Pollard or Spears over Jennings and Mooney? Yes, I would play both of them over both of them as of right now. If you had both Pollard and Spears, I'd play both of them over those wide receivers, assuming it's like a half PPR. As for Eagles or Miami defense, I'd rather have the Eagles defense this week. PPR McMillan or Garrett Wilson, I'd rather just play McMillan there. Baker or Goff, I have Goff 1 spot ahead of Baker, or 2 spots. Thank you. Again, tomorrow afternoon, I will post the tight end and quarterback rankings on the channel, which includes just players that haven't played yet. So we'll go into kind of further detail regarding those players going into this week. Additionally, tomorrow night, I'll be here live on the channel, Saturday morning, Sunday morning, and that'll be the season. Hopefully you guys do not play in week 18. If you do play in week 18, I will be in the area and I will be live streaming every day still up until the end of week 18. So week 18 schedule is just live streaming every single day, once a day, which will include like running back, wide receiver, tight end rankings, all that kind of jazz up until that Sunday, in order to still help you win in week 18, even though I don't play in any of my leagues in week 18. So it's going to be a very interesting scenario deciphering how and who is going to play. But we'll keep that in mind. As of right now, I'm going to answer a couple more questions for the next 5 to 10 minutes, and then we're going to call it there. Again, I'll be back tomorrow So if in fact I'm not able to answer your question directly today, of course, hopefully we can do so in the coming days, whether it is tomorrow's video / live stream and of course the Saturday and Sunday live streams. Thank you. Okay, a couple more questions here and then we're gonna head out. All right, Scott says, in a full PPR flex, Jennings, Devontae Smith, Ridley, or McMillan, of those available options, I'd probably playing Sutton, Wilson, BTJ. In the event in which, let's say, for example, Jalen Hurts cleared concussion protocol, I would play Devontae Smith there. In the event in which he does not, I'd be hard-pressed in a full PPR not to play Ridley there. Juan says, full PPR, Hall, Connor, or London. Out of those three in a full PPR, I'm playing Breece Hall. John says, flex one in a full PPR, Chigozimo, Okonkwo, Alexander Madison, Tank Bigsby, Josh Downs, Quentin Johnston. In a full PPR, I'd probably just go with Chigozimo, Okonkwo there. Opener says, Jonnu, Spears, Ford, Vidal, flex. It depends on what a lot of the statuses of these players. Let's say, for example, both J.K. Dobbins and Spears were out. And Pollard were out. Spears would be number 1. Vidal would be number 2. Jonnu would be 3, and Ford would be 4. In the event in which both of their starters are active, it's probably just playing Jonnu Smith there. Jack says Thielen, Dowdle, Kittle, pick 2. I'd rather play Thielen and Kittle. I'm not playing Dowdle this week in comparison to those alternatives. Adam says PPR, flex, Wilson, Shakir, or Spears. Again, it depends on whether or not Pollard's status is going to be active or inactive. In the event in which we're assuming Pollard is active, at that point, I'm probably just playing Shakir over the bunch. Milwaukee says, can I trust Hubbard against the Bucs defense? He's my RB1 in the championship game. I mean, truly, you have no other choice but to trust them. I mean, what's your alternative? That's really the question. If your alternative option is playing like Alexander Madison, the answer is yes, you can trust them. May or Stafford? As of right now, I have Stafford slightly ahead of May. Considering the rushing upside that May presents, though, I may, for lack of a better term, pivot in his direction. We'll see by tomorrow's rankings. Again, that video will be out tomorrow afternoon. Rob S. says, I watched Kenny Pickett's interview. He'd sound like he was starting. Yeah. So based on everything that we've heard in terms of not only Kenny Pickett's kind of interview, but additionally, the Eagles elevated Ian Book from the practice squad, which is a clear indication that they need a third quarterback on roster because most likely Jalen Hurts is not going to be active. But I didn't want to make any like assumptions. I still want to wait until the guarantee tomorrow once they designate him out before I proceed to, say 100% one way or the other. Jolly Pop says Flacco took first team reps. Yeah, look, this is what I'm talking about. Earlier today, when they're talking about Richardson being injured, that's a little bit worrisome. So we'll keep an eye on that. We'll keep that monitored as we continue. Again, that's where I'm going to call, guys. I do appreciate y'all coming through, supporting the channel. Of course, it's been a very rough week so far in terms of Week 17 championships with the 3 games that have transpired already, but hopefully this upcoming Saturday and Sunday we'll go ahead and turn it in and flip the script and, of course, get us on the right side of history. All right, guys, that'll be it. I appreciate y'all. I'm cueing the music. Have a great rest of your night. Happy holidays as well. I'll be back tomorrow night via live stream, Saturday morning and Sunday morning via live stream. Otherwise, have a great rest of your night. I'm cueing the double helix. And until next time, have a good one. I'll see you guys. Peace.